Good morning, welcome back to Black Bear Forge. Today I thought we would make a really simple project. This is something one of the neighbors asked me to make for him. Doesn't have to be very complicated. It's a scraper for a wood cook stove. Now if you've never cooked in a wood cook stove, it has to channel the combustion gases from the firebox that is up here all the way around the oven and back across the top to get to the chimney, and that's how it heats the oven. But those passages are only about 1.5 to 2 inches wide, and they really plug up with creosote fast. And this is the tool you use to get in there through a couple little access ports and scrape all that out so your oven heats properly. Now this is one that actually came with an oven we have. It's an old original, and it is super simple. About a 3/16 rod, 16 gauge plate on the end, absolutely no frills. I think we can do a little bit better, but we don't want to make it too heavy because this needs to kind of be a little bit flexible, and if it's too big, it won't fit. So for the scraper part, I'm going to go to 1/8 inch material just to make it a little bit more solid. And for the handle, we're going to use 1/4 inch square bar. I hope this all works fine. I'll try it out on my oven when we're all done to make sure it works. Now lengthwise, the original is 28 inches or 71 centimeters long. We need a handle, so I'll cut this 30 inches long. Exact sizes probably don't matter too much, but it does have to be long enough to get clear to the back of the stove. And for this piece, it is 1.25 inches, which is about 30 millimeters, by 3 inches, which is about 75 millimeters. So let's cut some materials, head over to the forge, and we'll get started on our wood stove scraper. Since this is a fairly simple project, I'm going to try and do everything with the most basic of tools that will get the job done the way I want it done. You notice I didn't use a chop saw or an angle grinder to cut the materials. I just used a hacksaw and a vise, and that's something that everybody should have in their shop. And if you don't, after you have forge hammer and anvil, I think a vise and a hacksaw should be next on your list. Let's start with forging a bevel on the edge of the scraper piece. I think that'll make a little bit better scraper if it's got a little bit of a knife edge on it. It's just a real simple bevel is all I'm going to put on here. I'm doing both sides so you can flip it either direction. There's not an up or a down on this thing. And that'll take a little bit of filing. So after you buy a hacksaw, buy a file. So that's really all I'm going to do to that. Keeping this simple, I'm just going to draw a little point on this. And put a little curl on there. Just something like that. And then we'll make a ring of about 1 inch or so diameter. I've quenched where I don't want this to bend, and I've quenched my little curl so I don't mess it up. still better not to hammer on the curl any more than you have to, but it is hard to avoid. There's our beginning of the ring. I'm just going to offset that a little bit right there. This is just up to what you want it to look like. If you want it perfectly round, it's probably easier to do it in a bending fork or a small jig, but if we want to make that round, we can keep messing with it. The horn on my anvil isn't real pointy, so it's a little harder to do some of these things on it, which is why I have various other tools for doing it. But in keeping with the theory that I'm trying to show this with very simple tools, we will just get it as close as reasonably possible right here at the anvil and be quite happy with it. I think that's enough messing around with it. Let's put some decorative twists in there. I'm not going to bother laying these twists out. I'm just going to eyeball everything. I think I'm going to do a series of maybe 3 back and forth twists right there. So we're going to do 1. Now we can't clamp that in the vise to do the next one because of the risk of damaging it. So instead I just cool that first twist off, eyeball the same distance out this way, and twist it the other direction. Ideally the same number of turns. And using the vise is a very good way to straighten a twist. Put it in there on the diagonal, and that way you're not deforming your twist, you're just straightening it. And then by cooling that twist, I can go back and twist the first direction again. And that gives me a nice little pattern of reverse twists. I'm going to let this end cool, turn it around and do a little tenon for the other end. Now ideally I would do this with a butcher, some tenoning dies, and a monkey tool. But since I'm trying to go really simple on this, I'm just going to upset the end a little bit. I want to try and get the upset about a 1/2 inch back. And that will allow me a better place to put a shoulder on my tenon. Thin material, so keep it straight while you're doing this. Holding it in the vise and using a torch just on that last 3/4 of an inch or so would make your life a little easier. This may not upset a whole lot, but any increase in the size of that shoulder will help make this more secure in the long run. Now using blows kind of coming from the side that sort of upsetting and sort of tapering, I'm going to start working a little bit of a taper in there that will become my tenon. I want maybe a 1/2 inch of tenon in the long run, 3/8. Doesn't need a lot. It's not a high strength application. And I'm just establishing something there so that my mass is where the shoulder wants to be. That's really all I'm going to do at the anvil. The rest of that will be done with a file at the vise. Just establishing my mass where I want it for the project. Again, butcher's tenoning dies and monkey tools make this much, much easier. Just going to start by taking the scraper piece and cleaning it up. I'm just going to use a single 10-inch file. This one's pretty well used. It's been around a while. The point is, you don't have to make these things difficult. Other tools make your life easier. But if you have simple tools, just make simple projects. I'm checking it for square and just eyeball square. I'm not worried about it being perfectly measured from a square, just something that looks right. And then clean up that edge. And I'm going to go ahead and clean up my bevel just a little bit. Not a real big deal. This is going to work no matter what. I suppose if I were to put my touch mark on this, which I'll probably go ahead and do, I'll put it on this piece. But a lot of times, simple projects like this, I just don't worry about signing them. My neighbor knows where it came from. That's all I need to do to that piece. Okay, this is now cool enough to work with. Like I say, I want a tenon on here that's maybe 3/8 of an inch long or something like that. Not super critical. And the easiest way to do that is just to set that distance starting at the fattest spot of my shoulder, as vertical in your vise as you can get it. And then just file this way. Pushing sideways, don't cut into your vise. Yes, this does wear the vise a little bit, but this is an old worn out vise anyway, so I'm not all that worried about it. This file also has a safe edge, so if I stand it up this way, it won't cut into the vise. So that's a good thing if you've got it, but not all files come that way. I just want to leave a nice square shoulder with a round tenon. As centered on here as you can get it. Now I'm going to drill a hole in this. You can punch a hole if you've got the punches, but then again, that's more tools that you might have to make. But if you've got a little battery-powered drill and a 3/16 drill bit, no problem to drill that. So there's the bit I'm going to use. And it looks like it's going to fit pretty good, just a little bit rounder here. And a little bit of a bevel at the top to make sure it goes through the hole easily. Another really good way to check these are with one of these drill guides if you happen to have one. This is a cheap plastic one somebody sent me in the mail years ago, but it works just fine. It actually looks like I'm a little small, so I went to an 11/64 bit. That would be better. Whatever works, and it doesn't hurt to drill this, and if it doesn't fit, drill it a little bit larger. Of course, I am making a little bit of an assumption that you've got some sort of measuring and marking tools. Looks like that could be over just a hair. Damn it. And yes, I would normally drill this on the drill press. But if you don't have a drill press, you can get by without one. See, that's just a little bit tight. I think I'll go to the next size bit up. Now that fits just fine. I need to clamp this good and tight for this, so a spacer helps your vice jaws survive better in this kind of a use, because this has to run down the side. You can't center it, and this keeps the pressure on your jaws even. You just use a scrap. You don't have to have anything made up special. Now, this is someplace where having a monkey tool to really set that down tight is helpful. But if you don't have one, a scrap with a hole drilled in it that's thicker than your tenon is tall will serve the same purpose. I'm going to put that in line with my eye, so I need to turn that 90 degrees. Worth checking those things before you seal it up. And that's really all there is to it. Now, that's a very simple project that shows the kind of things you can do if you have very basic tooling. You can still make things that require tenons and put holes in things. We didn't use a lot of unusual tools. If you're blacksmithing, you probably have a forge, hammer, anvil, vise, and hopefully a twisting wrench or some other kind of a wrench you can use for twisting, hacksaw, a file, a center punch, a tape measure, something to mark with. Really, that's all we needed for this. Oh yeah, and a little handheld electric grill, which most people have around the house. But again, you can make a punch and you can punch the hole just as easily. Now, this is not a project most of you are going to need, but it's absolutely critical if you have a wood cook stove. And my neighbor has a wood cook stove he would like to use, but can't because he doesn't have the one that goes with the stove. So now he can have this one, and it should work just fine. And it ends up being almost exactly the same size as the one that I had as a sample, only it's a little bit stouter, and hopefully it works okay. I think I'm going to take it in the house, try it out in our stove. It probably needs to be cleaned anyways. As always, I hope you enjoyed the video. Give it a thumbs up if you did. If you haven't done so already, I would love it if you hit that subscribe button down there. Ring the bell next to the subscribe button to be notified when I make new videos. Then stick around, watch a few of the other videos, share the videos with your friends. If you'd like to provide financial support for the channel, there are links in the video description for both PayPal and Patreon. Those are merely donations. The content is free and will remain free. In the meantime, I hope you have time to get out to your shop, make something, but stay safe, wear your safety glasses, and we will see you for the next one.